Hey everyone, welcome to the not quite weekly update about Investables. I'm going to be moving to a lower frequency for these updates, and here's why. Investables is currently in a phase that is quite interesting from our perspective as founders, but doesn't really produce stuff that's worth sharing with everyone on a weekly basis. Every startup goes through some kind of grind at some point, where there's just a lot of work to do without that much clarity about the destination. A lot of that work is speculative, and so it almost feels a bit indecent to share it all as it's happening. Too much of it involves meetings that may or may not lead somewhere, and tentative explorations of some possible directions or pivots that may or may not work out. Personally, I don't feel like sharing all of those as they happen. And also, in some cases, the people we're speaking to don't want to be name dropped in my video updates. So I'm not going to be going into that much detail in these updates. But that means that, unlike in the period that led to the Auratis launch, there just isn't that much to share. I do want to share something about the nature of the grind that we're in now, because it's important also for any first-time founders listening to understand the difference between the right kind of grind and the less helpful kind. Investables is super early. I think the core innovation we're developing is going to change the world, but it requires a lot of pieces to fall into place to really work. Because it's so early, it also appears very risky to any kind of startup that's looking for funding. Funding is already hard enough. Why add another risk to the mix by testing a new funding model that's not been tested yet? Quite rightly, the startups that have an alternative that they are reasonably confident in will pick that, rather than a risky unknown. And so the kind of startups we could attract to work with us right now may not be at the stage where we can help them succeed. There's no point in taking on fundraising clients and then not raising funds for them. Nobody wins from this. So we explore. Specifically, we explore ways to test parts or all of the model. The destination is still a startup funding model, but if we can test part of the Investables model somewhere else, that enables us to both learn more about how to build this business and also create some precedents that might attract clients that are able to pull off an innovative crowdfunding campaign. And it might even earn us some fees, which is always helpful. Some of the directions we're exploring you already know about. For example, the sports clubs. That seems to be taking a while to get anywhere, but it could be really helpful because it pins down the retail buyer engagement side of the equation and allows us to learn about the other parts. Another interesting option is to work with Web3 accelerators, where they already have investors in the form of NFT holders and startups that they want to invest in, and we might just provide the mechanism for legally packaging shares into NFTs. This would test the legal and technical propositions. Yet another option is private members clubs, who often have a very supportive base of wealthy members who may be willing to pay for additional lifelong privileges in addition to their existing memberships. And of course, the more we dig around, the more of those lateral opportunities we find. Most won't work out, and that's okay. We just need one at a time, and enough to keep us going and learning until the market is ready or our product is battle tested enough. And it's a grind. It's by no means obvious that any of those opportunities will work out or will teach us anything. The important thing about this grind is that it's very deliberately directed towards learning and validating. Every startup involves some kind of grind, but when your startup starts to feel like a grind, make sure you check what the purpose of the grind is. As long as you're learning and validating or even invalidating your business model, it's probably a good grind. However, if you're just treading water and nothing is really happening, or there's just more of the same and it's not really growing, then you might want to ask yourself if your startup has gotten stuck down a dead end somehow. If so, either you find a way to pull it out, or it might be more honest to admit that it is no longer a startup, but just a business, which might be profitable, in which case, congratulations, or not, in which case you might need to rethink things a fair bit. I hope you find this perspective helpful. I'll see you at the next update, whenever that is. It might be a few weeks. GM and good luck.